Over the weekend, we finally got to dig into Riot's new card game, and I had an absolute blast with it. Hi everyone, my name is Cosmic. Welcome to the channel, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about our first impressions with the game, as well as have a recorded match at the end. Now, if all you care about is seeing the gameplay, maybe you're more experienced to TCGs, I will have that timestamped in this video, so you can skip right to it. But otherwise, I thought it would be a good time just to give my early first impressions of it, the good, some of the challenges that I see, and then get into more of the actual cards itself. So if you're newer to TCGs and want to see how it plays, there's a ton of great videos out there. I definitely recommend go checking those out. But I will at least talk at a high level what makes Riftbound so unique, right? If you follow this channel for a while, over the last year, I've spent a lot of time covering new card games that were coming out or coming out later this year. And one thing that definitely kind of stuck with me is using the example of Altered. It really had finally something that was different, right? I think in the landscape today, especially if you're someone who's played a couple card games, a lot of it does feel a little bit too similar. So that's why I'm really excited for Riftbound to do something a bit different with the battlefield. So in this game, the way that you win is actually by going up and scoring 8 points by conquering these battlefields. Now, some of these will be just generically good, and you're happy to see them. In the case of Targon's Peak, you just get to untap some runes at the end of the turn when you conquer it, giving you more resources to use removal spells or different various interaction on your opponent's turn. And then other of them are, well, really heavily favored, at least early on, towards like Victor with Warcamp, that your tokens and your small units suddenly become just a massive amount of power that you want to accumulate on the battlefield. So if you're looking for a break that's not just a 1v1 crashing into your opponent's life and having that more of same old style, whether it be life points or shields or life cards, what have you, right? Riftbound does offer something interesting. And I think that the battlefields do add a lot to the game from a 1v1 lens. And maybe another obligatory disclaimer is that everything I'm going to say in today's video is focused around a 1v1 perspective, but there is also a 2v2 free-for-all up to 4 players multiplayer format that does seem to have a lot going for it as well. And battlefields really do help shape that experience. I got to watch a couple free-for-all games as well as 2v2 with just some friends in Discord, and was honestly quite surprised at how well it played out. Someone who's tried to play Commander in the past, I've tried to play some of the other multiplayer games and formats, Glory Bringer for Shadow vs. Evolve, what have you, right? They just don't hit the same because at the end of the day, it still is that very I want to swing for game, you only have so many life points feel to it, where Riftbound, because you have these battlefields, add another dimension to the game, which the other part that I'll mention when you start the game, these battlefields are somewhat random. In a 1v1 setting, you bring 3 with your deck, you shuffle them up, pick one at random. In the multiplayer setting, everyone brings 1. If you have 4 players, you can only have a max of 3, so then you have 3 different battlefields on play. So this is really great because, as I mentioned, you have some of these more generic ones like Targon's Peak, which is just good to have, and a lot of decks will definitely make more use of this as kind of the game evolves. And then you have the other ones that are just very, very strong for, say, Victor or any future champion that can push out a bunch of tokens to really get that extra power. So I'm really curious to see of where this all lands, but overall, very positive first impressions. So with that out of the way, just really talking about, well, what makes this so different than every other card game out there, and that's going to be probably a main point of attraction for a lot of players once you sit down and learn how to play. Let's talk about the actual good points. So first and foremost, I think it's really important to the identity. And yes, a lot of the cards that we've seen so far, there's going to be some artwork changes, what have you, but the legend identity and signature spells really do be hidden. So again, for me personally, I covered a lot of Legends of Runeterra in the past on the channel, and that was my first real dive into the League of Legends IP and learning about the different legends or champions in this case, right, and how they evolve and play out and what have you. And I just really fell in love with every card. They really did a great job at bringing them to life. And at least with the first impressions, and again, just the trial decks that we have today, I think that they carry this over very, very well. So there is that flavor to it. The legends, which is, again, what your leaders are in this game, they all feel unique in what they want to be doing, and they have a very clear theme assigned to them, which is acted upon quite easily as you're playing out the game, and you really feel that identity. And this kind of ties into the second point, is that it is a very good launching point for Legends of Runeterra players, where you might be saying, hey, is it finally time for me to go into the physical landscape? And I'm sure we're going to see more of this with the full set. But if you liked PNZ discard aggro in Legends of Runeterra, spoiler, Jinx is a really good home for you to land on. And I'm sure part of this is also a very conscious effort by the devs and trying to say like, hey, we know that we had Legends of Runeterra in the past. Most likely people who play that are going to be checking out the game. And we want some number of decks in set 1 to be representative of that to some degree. Right now, they are different games, right? From a life point to a scoring-based system. Naturally, you are going to have some differences there to account for. But still, for those, if you liked Jinx in Legends of Runeterra, I think you'll be very, very happy with where it landed, at least in early spoilers so far in Riftbound. And then the other really main point that I just have to highlight, and I'm going to be biased because I come from a Magic background, and very clearly a lot of the devs do as well, there is a lot of interaction. You'll see this in the video, and maybe one of the challenges with doing live content is you don't always get the best games you want to see, or maybe the closest of games, or one deck does everything and the other one doesn't get to show off the cool thing. But I had kind of a miracle game, as it were, where you really got to see both points of interaction play out quite well between a Yasuo and Jinx matchup that doesn't always translate as well into some other card games. So if you are someone who likes to have interaction on your opponent's turn, or different ways that you can interact with the board state, being moving cards from the battlefield to the base, what have you, I think there's a lot of interesting ways that you get to play this game that really force you to think about a different dynamic. Again, part because of the battlefields and because conquering them usually will give you some type of effect, right? To also just scoring points and needing to double score on your last turn. So when you go to 7 points on your turn, you have to either hold to go up to 8, so hold both battlefields for a full turn, or if it goes to your turn, you have to score both battlefields to go from 7 to 8 points to win the game. So this does give a little bit of a different feel to the game that, you want to rush away from a battlefield, go back, build up your army, and then do one big conquest at the end to get that 8th point. That a lot of times it does kind of feel fun that you get to have this like one last big showdown. This is what the entire war has been building up for. And to be fair, there are going to be some games where you're just like, oh, my Yasuo is just going to take double points, I win, right? Cool. So that does happen in card games, and there's a little bit of variance at the end of the day, but I think it is something that still plays out quite well, and I'm very excited to see what levels of interaction that we have once we get to the full set. Moving on from there, I do want to at least acknowledge some challenges, and I don't want to call these negative or bad or what have you, because, right, we have 80 out of 298 cards or whatever it is, right, basically say 300, so some of this might change, and it's not going to be, like, oh, nerf this card, or oh, this card should be banned, right, because there's no possible way of knowing what the full set is going to look like and how some of those shake out. Like, do I think some cards are really good in this very limited format? Yeah, there's some insane cards by comparison, but this is such a limited view of the overall set 1. I think it would be criminally unfair to call for any bans or changes or anything as it exists today. However, I do want to at least call out some part design, where it lands from a value perspective that I'm very curious to see how it goes from here. So first and foremost, I have to address the big elephant in the room is seals. So as you play a card, you might have noticed they have this symbol on them that is the power. And what that means is you have to recycle or lose that many runes, place them to the bottom of your deck to play the card. And so this is well reserved for like the stronger cards in the deck. So, at least it's tied to more powerful stuff. And in that way, I do think it feels fair. However, the games where you get your seals early versus you don't see them at all is a night and day difference. And this is just with the trial deck. So some of this might be a deck building choice that gets fixed later on. But at least as it exists today, whatever your main rune is going to be, it feels like your deck list is going to automatically start with 3 seals of whatever that color is. So in case of like the green or calm, it's Seal of Calm for green in the Yasuo deck, right? Maybe it's 2-2 split, maybe it's just 3, whatever that ends up being, right? But either way, the games where you actually get to ramp up your runes and keep that seal on board really just feels like a night and day difference. And the downside of this is that we know it is going to be an epic rarity, so this automatically spikes this card to a premium that everyone is going to want for their decks. So if you are playing the Yasuo deck, right, there's going to be 2 different, so you're going to have the green and purple seals that you're potentially going to want, but you still have to keep in mind that there are going to be other decks that also want green or also want purple. In the case of Jinx, right, is going to be purple red. So you're going to have such a higher demand of these cards in general. And of course, if you are a more competitive player, shocker, you're going to want to buy 3 of every seal day one or whenever you can afford to get them, because they are going to have such staying power in the format. Now, that said, there could be some other cards or other ways that we can provide rune value that's not just ramping. I really doubt it, but it might come in a future set that make the seals not as important. But at least for right now, in the handful of games that we've played, I mean, it's insane. And the downside of this then, right, is that it's very likely we are going to see seals that land in the $30 to $50 range per each one, because we know it's a larger set. We know it's only 6 epics per box. And because they are going to be such a meta staple, everybody's going to want them. So that does raise the question of, maybe we get a reprint in set 2 for some of them. What does that really look like? So again, very early on to see how they're going to address this problem, or maybe we'll get like alt arts for regional players, something, right, to bring down the overall cost. There's a lot of things that they could do, but again, at the time of recording this, we don't really have a roadmap on their future plans or organized play, what have you. So it is a bit of a hurry up and wait to see how they address this seal issue. Moving on from there, bases. So as a quick note, your base is in front of you. Your battlefield, of course, are the locations that you're conquering. And the full game boils down between battlefield and bases and kind of going back and forth between them. However, as it exists today, right, we only really have Super Mega Death Rocket as kind of like the early game removal that if your opponent is able to stick a engine piece early in their base and it just stays back there, they can just run away with the game and you can't really do anything. Now, part of me does understand this is a bit of a design philosophy standpoint that, yes, if it's in your base, it should be safe and it allows you to ramp up into the next turn. So I do fully expect that the removal that we have options, removal as options is going to be limited. I fully recognize that is most likely the case. However, at least today in the limited card pool that we have, it feels backbreaking that your opponent goes, here's my early engine. You have 2 turns to answer it. You have 1 card in your entire deck that does anything about it. You didn't get it. Sorry, I won the game. Like turn 4, it's already over sort of thing, right? A little bit of an exaggeration, but it's still going to feel bad once we get to the full set and more of these cards get spoiled. Now, we'll have to wait and see where that lands in terms of how much base interaction that we get. And not just strictly removal, right? I could mean like removing something from the battlefield to the base to battlefield, right? And that's like a swap, right? Interaction. So something like that could play a role, and maybe that's a future champion, who knows? But at least for right now in the earlier games that we've played and just the interaction we saw, there are just too many games that just ran away without having any possible way to interact with it. That did feel pretty bad. But again, there could be more answers coming in the full set. Some of the last 2 parts here is concerns around 1v1 versus multiplayer balancing. This is like, I have to say it just to say it, but it's also one of the things that like you either are a 1v1 person or you're a free-for-all person, and it'll probably be 2 different bans listed, and who cares, right? Sure, but I feel obligated because I'm making this video, because I at least want to talk about it, that there needs to be some type of conversation around with it, because likely they will have to end up doing different ban lists or restrictions, what have you, if they want to keep these 2 formats kind of alive and supported. And the best example of this, at least so far, is Jinx, which in a 1v1 setting is extremely strong, right? Getting the extra card advantage does a lot for you for helping churn through the deck, but that value immediately falls off if you have to worry about 2 additional players at the table, because Jinx does not have the options to really defend herself in that regard. So, we are going to have different tier lists in the different champions, which can be fine, but the concern of what this really boils down to is I hope that we don't see certain champions that are only for free-for-all. And the reason I bring this up is the example of Glorybringer, the Shadowverse Evolve multiplayer format. They do have a separate product that is strictly for a multiplayer setting, and those champions are going to find a home in those, or leaders or classes, what have you, in those style of products. So I hope what this means is in the future, Riot will consider releasing strictly commander style of stuff and put it on a side note instead of being in the main set, because nothing is going to feel worse that your main champion that you're so excited for and really excited to see how it comes alive in a 1v1 setting is only for multiplayer, or it only has an ability that really shines in multiplayer. So again, this is a little bit more of a earlier what will they do situation, but I'm very curious to see how this affects future champions. And then another one, which again, it's a challenge because I have to mention it, but we'll see where it lands, is hidden cards. So hidden cards are effectively traps. It's something you place face down in a battlefield and your opponent just basically has to take a guess of what it is. Now, as it is right now, we have Hidden Blade and only Hidden Blade. There's obviously the Teemo promo that people could be playing just because it's spoiled, but at least in the trial decks, right? That's it. So this is one that just strictly from a balancing perspective, I'm curious to see what other cards that we get in the main set. That will it actually be an interesting choice of, hey, there's, 2 or 3 different possibilities, for it being, how do I change how I'm going to play this game based on what's face down, right? Is it a Hidden Blade? Is it another card? Or maybe we get like a purple-yellow combination. Maybe it's a Teemo or a Hidden Blade, right? As just one random example. So, today it's very limited. It's very clear what it's going to be. And it just feels like, I have to sacrifice something to contest this battlefield and try to, lose my unit. Yes, I draw 2 cards, but if you're playing a slower deck, it can feel really bad, where I hope that we'll at least see a bit better of a power level across the board where Hidden Blade isn't the only, consideration. Is it really good in today's spoilers? Yes. For what the information we have today, it is a very strong card, and that's totally fine. But I am curious again to see kind of where they take hidden cards and really add into the gameplay mechanics, because right now it does feel a little bit lacking. And again, purely because we haven't seen more hidden cards. I wish they would have added a few, but at least we have some version of the cards itself. So with our first impressions out of the way, now we're going to transition into the decks and more of the gameplay and really showcase kind of what each of these want to be doing and what makes them so interesting in Riftbound. So up first, we are going to talk about the Yasuo deck, and the huge disclaimer I have to add there, so it's on the screen and everything, is that this is the beta versions of the cards. We know that the art images are going to change, so obviously this will look a bit different, but I at least wanted to put everything on here just for the sake of showcasing the cards, talking about a few, and just let you know some of the cards that were in the deck that we're going to use for the gameplay. So up front, I do have to add the disclaimer that I did mention how great that the legends and their signature spells kind of came together, and the decks really flow well into that. The Yasuo deck one, I gotta admit, I totally understand this was just to showcase like the movement side of the game, and for, again, what makes Riftbound unique and interesting and different than other trading card games. I think the Yasuo deck did a wonderful job at that. However, when we talk about what this deck wants to be doing, it does really feel like 2 decks clobbered together and what they should be doing compared to maybe what a more refined set 1 list is going to be. So for those like myself coming from Legends of Runeterra, we know that Ionia is all about the cheap, effective units with some combat tricks. We have Wielder of Water, which is a really great, effective body that we can play. We have Enguarde for our cheap combat tricks to make it even stronger. And then on the other side, that is more of what is Riftbound and what makes this special, we have the Yasuo and Kayn combo that really are all about combining it with your leader effect or moving between battlefields to really get more value and conquering multiple things in a turn that pull this in 2 different directions. Now, we're going to have to wait and see what the other pieces of Ionia give us, because I could see this as just a movement style of deck, which obviously Yasuo Legend really wants to be doing, and his champion card flows quite well with it. And then the other piece being just more of a strictly tempo-based deck. Not that we ever want to see Elusive come back and everything that we've seen on that side of Legends of Runeterra, but Wielder of Water really does feel like it wants to play this like more lower to the ground, cycle through a bunch of cheaper removal and or battle tricks, right? Be it bounce effects, be it Enguarde, what have you, right? To get the incremental value that way and slowly get up to 8 points, and then maybe just have some type of big power buffer at the end to give you a little bit more might when you really need it. So this one does feel more of, hey, let's showcase what makes Riftbound special, and maybe a little bit less of let's really lean into the legend and the champion. Again, they do a great job between the legend and champion because you get to play the Yasuo, and then on the same turn you get to move it to a battlefield with the legend effect or leader effect to then deal 6 damage and conquer something, which does come up in the gameplay video. But outside of that, the movement gimmicks really feel a little bit limited, other than Traveling Merchant, which is just a discard and draw, giving you a little more cycle, right, which is quite nice. So I will say that, again, for making Riftbound feel special, Yasuo deck did a pretty good job of that, and I'm really looking forward to what other effects that we get within the main set. And then moving on from there, we have Jinx, which, again, if you've played Legends of Runeterra, this is just... You know these cards, you love these cards, it's time to get aggressive, it's time to discard your hand, get all these extra effects, and really bump up the power level. So again, for those who maybe have not played Legends of Runeterra, Jinx is all about getting a bunch of attackers onto the board, going hell-bent, to use the MTG term, or just getting to no cards in hand so that you're drawing extra cards or you're getting various effects by discarding cards to either play a Flame Chomper, or maybe you're getting your Super Mega Death Rocket back from your trash or discard back to your hand to play as another removal. So this card is all about being aggressive. You have Chemtech Enforcer, which is going to give you the extra attack and really upscale his power, which can help him punch above of his cost, which does lean itself to kind of another disclaimer I wanted to add and forgot to add in the challenges part of this deck does feel really strong at getting ahead on your points and then just rushing everything back to your base so your opponent can't interact with it when you're at 7, and then just going for that last point. You say, okay, here's all my guys that I push up in one turn, and there's very few points of interaction you can have unless you have 5 combat tricks that you somehow saved until that exact moment. So it can feel super overwhelming if your opponent just gets to have this last final point rush, and Vi helps out a ton with that, with getting to recycle extra cards and boost up her power, again leading into more of the payoff for all those discards that we were talking about. So 2 really great decks. Again, one that's more about showcasing Riftbound, what makes it unique. Another one that's basically saying, hey, Legends of Runeterra players, come check out Riftbound. We have something that you know and love. And then also Jinx, obviously just being a popular character as it exists today because of Arcane and everything surrounding it with the marketing and media and what have you. So I think Jinx is just a good one to have anyways because it'll be popular. But the other part I want to give one last shout out here to is the battlefields. And as I talked about them earlier, what makes them unique. We also have Zaun Warrens, which is just another discard outlet for Jinx, which just feels so strong, where Yasuo has the Targon's Peak, which just gives you runes back and saves up a couple runes to get those key battle tricks on your opponent's turn. So again, I had a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to this game coming out later this year. For now, after this video, of course, I'm going on my trip, so there's going to be a little bit of a break between now and whenever I get the chance to do another video. And then also, I'm going to wait for the full Chinese release, which once we get more cards, I'll probably do another gameplay video just to showcase more of what set 1 can offer, but it's probably going to be a little while until we get to that point. So with that out of the way, let's now dig into the gameplay, showcase what makes this so special, and of course, don't forget to like and subscribe for future content. Getting into our gameplay, I want to give a shout out to Shining for helping us with the recording. For player 1, you do get 2 runes, and you're supposed to draw a card. I catch that shortly, but the Traveling Merchant is really the best early play that we're looking for to get going, get our discard draw, try to filter through the deck, because as I mentioned, we have a lot of battle tricks that we want to try to find and get the right pieces for, because the Jinx decks can be very strong into what we want to be doing. So if we don't find the right pieces at the right time, Jinx runs away with the game quite easily. And on Shining's side, he is playing, again, a more aggressive strategy, trying to discard down and get those early bodies on board with a lot of ways to either hit 3 power or 4 power, which at least in early previews has been pretty strong so far. From there on, we're both going to get 2 runes as the game progresses, drawing a card every turn. And here we are going to get a Conquer. And what I really like about Riftbound is that there are a lot of windows of interaction that you're going to see come up in this match. So he is going to use a Gust, which is going to prevent me from getting the point for this round. But because the movement trigger still happens, we do get the discard 1, draw 1. And of course, this is all going to happen before I see that extra card. So in case I would have had a deny or something, or defy in this case for the Legends of Runeterra fans, right? I would have been able to prevent it, but in this case, it does go back to my hand. The Water Disciple there is a great 4 power, very, very strong early turn play that we want to see. If you're going first and you can get on turn 2, you know, it gets us a turn slower than what we want, but that 4 power going second is really, really strong. And then the Sigils is that 0 drop that I played that helps with the recycling cost, which will come up quite a bit this game, and I think are going to be so important to proper deck building. Shining showing off the Legion keyword here, which allows him to play a card for reduced cost, which again really plays into the more aggressive strategy that we're expecting from a Jinx style of deck, especially those who have come from Legends of Runeterra, is really about powering out your board and going down to 0 cards as quickly as possible. So here we're going to use Yasuo's ability to move up the Disciple, which again will come up later about why we're doing that, but Targon is going to allow us to recover 2 of those runes at the end of our turn, leaving up some battle tricks. So this is really important as a Yasuo player, because again, a lot of the cards that we're going to have are going to be need to play on our opponent's turn for extra might, for extra draw cards, you know, just general battle tricks that you find often in TCGs, really playing a key role here. And from Shining Side, he's going to have the Super Mega Death Rocket. And this card is so incredibly strong at just being able to pop something on the board for 4 damage. And what's really important about this card in particular is that it can hit anywhere. So your base is usually safe from most removal in the game, at least as it is today. But we do thankfully have the Defy to save our Disciple on the Mount Targon. So he's going to have to get up his 4 attacking unit to make this a proper trade. But the other 2 runes that I was holding up, again, trying to threaten a battle trick. So in case I have 6, I could take out both of his units here while still drawing a card, forcing our opponent to just commit more to this battlefield than maybe what he would like to do. But in this case, again, it is just the meditation just to get an extra draw, but I still will be able to kill his, what is effectively 4 might on attacking unit, making our units a little bit healthier to stick around where possible. Otherwise, just the 2s and 3s on board so far to deal with. So with this, he is still technically going to conquer. So he is going to get another Targon's Pink trigger at the end of his turn because the other unit is still on there. And again, this is really important for a lot of the chaos or purple style of decks. You just have extra cards to use. Oftentimes it's bounce effects, and I'm sure there's gonna be a lot more in the set. So both of these decks really do want to rely on Targon's Peak, at least in the very small sample that we have so far, and just getting extra runes up, threatening, removal can be really important as the game progresses. So there are going to be a couple quick cuts here just in case, as we're learning the game, we're still trying to pick up various rules or understanding, proper sequencing. So we're going to use our Traveling Merchant just to get a discard draw, see what we can get, trying to find some more pieces. In the mid game, our hand was a little bit clogged for what we want to do, but thankfully we do have a battle trick here with giving us the +2 might and drawing a card. So we're going to be able to take back Targon's Peak, get a point for conquering, and then get to untap 2 runes at the end of our turn. And Misfortune is a crazy card, at least in the limited pool that we have so far. Just effectively getting haste for a point, right? Being able to play to an open battlefield, immediately give you that point. And then also we know that the Jinx deck, at least early on, has a lot of 2s and 3s that they want to be playing. So Misfortune here actually does quite a good job at holding down a field and forcing our opponent to use a Super Mega Death Rocket or some other trick if they want to clean up the battlefield. And here again, Shining just going for the discard and draw, trying to get down their hand size to really get the most out of Jinx's abilities. And again, getting extra cards back through the Super Mega Death Rocket because you have to conquer and then discard 1. So just a trade here, freeing up the battlefield. And again, he still has a unit here that he can still conquer it, get the Targon's Peak effect to untap 2 runes at the end, as well as getting back the Super Mega Death Rocket, which he's going to loop right here because he conquered, gets a discard, and is just going to immediately firing off, which is going to knock out the Misfortune. And again, because Misfortune allows us to play to open battlefields or other cards to open battlefields, it is a card that can apply a lot of pressure more traditionally in the aggro style of decks. But again, the Yasuo deck really feels split between 2 different things that it wants to be doing. But again, at least in the limited card pool, it can apply a lot of pressure if your opponent's not ready for it. And here's what I really love about the game, getting the champions that just sit next to your legend. So think of it like buddy or a partner or whatever you want to call it. So he always has access to that Jinx, but once it dies, it will go into their graveyard as usual. And we will see in the full set that every legend has 2 different champions that go with it, or 2 different partners. So that will be really interesting to see how that unfolds. And here we're doing the Yasuo Shuffle, as we like to call it. We get to play our own champion. Because we have the movement effect with Yasuo, it's going to immediately trigger the effect. But unfortunately for us, Shining does have the Rebuke, so it is going to go back to our hand. However, the when movement trigger is still going to happen, so the 6 might damage is going to trigger here and clean up that battlefield, which we catch here, keeping Shining at 2 points respectively. Once again, Misfortune coming back down. Again, he's going to have to shuffle one of those runes back to the bottom to play the power cost. Plays it to an open battlefield, immediately conquers that point back. And very quickly, right, we see a very quick turn of tables for the Jinx player, getting to bounce the Yasuo, just effectively timed walk us, as we like to say, or just set us back a full turn because the Yasuo went back into our hand. And because we are losing a rune every time we play it, because we only have the 1 sigil, we're not really ramping up our runes as much as we'd like. So it is quite hard to play a 6 cost card into a 2 movement effect. but going into Targon's Peak here at least gives us 2 runes up again, so we do have the opportunity to play some battle tricks, really leaning into that more Ionian style that we've seen from Legends of Runeterra. So this Yasuo is, you know, again, potentially threatening a lot of board here, because if it sticks around, we can move it back with Yasuo's ability so it remains active, and then move it to the other battlefield for 6 damage. So once it's on board, if you can get it to stick, it is a very serious threat that your opponent has to deal with. And again, there are ways that we can power it up to attack for 8 or higher amounts. You can still, he was asking me how many cards are left in my hand, so we still have quite a good grip here. We have a lot of battle tricks still available to us just based on how this game has gone, but he is just gonna hard play the Flame Chompers here just to get 3 more power onto the board, try to set up something for next turn. And what's really important here about the 5 points breakpoint here is that because you can only score each battlefield once per turn, the most I could go to is 7 points on this following turn. And that is really important because it guarantees that he has an extra turn to do whatever he wants with. And to get that 8th point, you either have to hold both for a turn or score both battlefields in the same turn. And if you haven't scored a battlefield yet, so let's pretend that I didn't score as I'm about to play this Misfortune. If I was already at 7, I would actually get to draw a card here because I can't score it just yet. So there is a way to draw extra cards kind of in the late game. This was me fixing the correction here. I drew the card mistake because I thought it's anytime you're at 7, but if it's hasn't been scored yet, but you cannot get that 8th point, that is when you would get the extra draw. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out long term. But either way, we wanted to play this Misfortune because it still gives us a pretty decent blocker or something to contest with on the board. It has 4 power. He would have to sacrifice some of his Jinx and cycle away some cards. We could also be threatening a bounce effect of our own if he goes all in on the Jinx strategy. So a 4 blocker is just a really good break point, at least for now, because if he doesn't want to play around that, then he has to super mega death rocket it away to begin with to even just try to contest the point. So a lot of options here in terms of how he wants to navigate this turn, but he is going to play the super mega death rocket. He is going to be able to knock out the Misfortune. However, again, this does open up a stack, which is really important, definitely my favorite part about the game, and knowing that how long damage persists or what kind of battle tricks we might have. Because the super mega death rocket is at, you know, slow speed, so to say, as long as I have a buff spell, I can actually save Misfortune here, which is now going to go up to 6 might, so it will have some damage on it, but we get to draw a card, keep it around, and if he tries to shove something to that battlefield, he is now immediately going to lose it because Misfortune is still going to punch back. And again, on our next turn, we only have to score both battlefields in the same turn. So as long as this Yasuo sticks around, on our next turn, we score the Windswept Hillock. We move it back to our base with Yasuo's movement effect, and then move him regularly with his just on-unit ability to deal 6 to something and really just get out any unit that might be pressuring us. And here we do have our own Rebuke, another bounce effect to save the Misfortune. And again, just really leaning in on how much disruption that this deck is able to provide. So with that play I just mentioned, we are going to be able to take it. So again, huge shout out to Shining. Thank you so much for helping us with the recording for this match. And I had a lot of fun with this one. So look forward to more Riftbound content in the near future. See you next time.